CST 239, this is milestone 5. This week we were, I wouldn't say challenged, but this is our efforts this week was to utilize generics as well as the collections framework and algorithms to sort our soluble products in ascending and or descending order based on name and price. So go ahead and get started here. Start with my code. So the two main things that really changed this week for me was to try and find a relative path to utilize our JSON files. So I'm going to go ahead and start there with my explanations on the code. So as you can see right now, as I ran it, I'm getting a java.io.file not found exception. So in order for me to give you a relative path, I had to utilize our GitHub repository. So I went ahead and uploaded an inventory.txt file into the repository that you have access to. If you click upon that inventory.txt file, about halfway down, it has the JSON inventory that's needed to be loaded into our code. So if you click on the raw button, go ahead and copy and paste that hyperlink into our storefront. Initialization method. It's right here where the URL is needed. Unfortunately, I could not find a way around this because it loads with a token. So it's something I kind of looked up a little bit online for setting things that could change. But as you can see, if you just load the current token URL, it will load the JSON file. So it does run. So from there, basically, I just had to change some of the ways that it was being utilized, primarily with the streams and file loading that I was using. So one of the conditions this week for our code was to utilize or converting all arrays to generics, I should say. That's the wording I wanted to look for. So I went ahead and created a custom comparator that utilized list and took a object of a soluble product. And I was able to utilize the collections framework to sort the products. As you can see, we go ahead and create a new list called sorted products. It's an array list, and it takes an insatiated object of the inventory manager and utilizes the get inventory method with the key set. And then I used the sorted products.sort comparator in order to return that array list. In the sorting method, utilizing that interface, the comparator interface, to get what we were desiring, which is returning our sorted products in that manner. So after creating that, I was able to utilize the comparator interface and created two different inner classes, one for a name comparator as well as one for a price comparator. They both do about the same thing. The purpose of this construct is to create an instance of the name comparator class, which can be used to sort a collection of soluble objects by their names, either in ascending or descending order, depending on the value of the ascending parameter. So we went ahead and wrote some shorthand for if-else statements here, which was order equals ascending question mark 1 -1. So what's that mean? We are setting order basically equal to 1 or -1, and that determines whether it is true to ascending or false to descending, and that allows us to basically decide between that comparison how we're going to list those names of our soluble objects. So it takes these two arguments, P1 and P2, and multiplies them by our order after this shorthand is basically returned a false or true statement that determines 1 or -1. So 1 is ascending and -1 is descending. So if the order is 1 or -1, it will determine whether the names will be listed based on one before the other, and it does span throughout the entire list that we're creating here of soluble product objects. So, and that's a bit of a mouthful, but that is what it's doing. utilizing some override method comparisons here. So those were the two main things that we added into our storefront class, as well as having to go into our inventory manager and change the load inventory from JSON method. So we're utilizing a string. That argument was passed as the URL string. From there, we did utilize a lot of the similar things that we did with the object mapped. Was able to then go and modify our try box to utilize a URL instead of a file name. Created an input stream to open a connection to the URL. We deserialized the JSON data from the input stream into an array of soluble objects using the object mapper read value method. Then loop through the soluble objects in the array and add it to the inventory with its quantity using the add inventory method. And then we have our catch box. Handle any particular exceptions that may come up. So I wrote one for a malformed URL exception as well as an IO exception. Pretty much everything else within the inventory manager class stayed the same. And to be honest, some of the things that I was pleasantly surprised with this week, because you wrote about it, you put it in the prompts, that some people find it a little bit more manageable is the way I would put it this week, just because I had some hash maps already utilized inside my code. So learning some of the different things that are utilized within hash maps already was kind of a breath of fresh air to go over it again. Stacks and queues, that was new to me, so it was really awesome to learn some new things that we could utilize. But I didn't have to put a lot of that back into what I was already utilizing inside my code, but the generics was great. And I see the huge benefits in that over time, potentially developing things that may be utilized for more than just one purpose or more than one data set or multiple anything. But yeah, so as you can see, we did run my code here and it did load. Hugely nervous about this. I know you're obviously well capable of loading a raw URL file. I just don't know if that's acceptable. And I did have a functionable code set last week, so I'm trying to meet some better parameters to try and make this more functionable. So I'm hoping that with the ability to access my raw JSON file online through the JIT repository, you'll be able to copy and paste that URL into the storefront class, as I had notated in some of my comments here as well. It's a bit mouthy, but this will be where you want to go ahead and copy paste that URL in from the raw context, and then from there you should be able to load the JSON file. Updated my URL. Flowchart didn't really get much editing because it's pretty much the same. Still have all the functionality as we did last week, just looks a lot cleaner now. The initialization method looks a lot smaller. The generics help make the sorting a lot easier than what I was utilizing prior for trying to compare IDs. So all in all, just gaining more capability with more understanding, so it's been good. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.